years ago on shipbuilding industry, which is quite interesting topic as we've heard the news about the Suez Canal and this massive 400-meter long ship being struck in the mud in the canal and preventing all kinds of exports from Asia to Europe and so on. But they have been taking the ship is being moved now and things are getting back to normal. But that was an interesting case, but I will not talk about that as much. How do I? Okay. So what we are interested in, I mean, I will go through. We have been doing research on university industry collaboration, and we have visited a number of European quality top universities. And what we have learned, this is something that we want to share. I guess the first thing that I want to mention is that there's no magic formula. There's no one size fits all type of an arrangement that universities can just copy, because it's all contextual, depending on regional situation, regional industries, traditions, and so on. So it doesn't help any university to go to Stanford or MIT, if you like, and copy what they are doing, because of the infrastructure. The industrial infrastructure is completely different, and the history. For example, in our case, in Turku, there's a long tradition of biotech and medical, I mean, life science, drug development type of issues. So the university and the industry, they collaborate very, very closely. But it's because of the fact that there has been drug development companies, big pharmaceutical companies in the area. So I guess the biggest message for my presentation today is that every different university has a different types of suitable arrangements and activities depending on the situation locally. So don't copy Stanford, don't copy MIT, don't copy us. You just need to work with the pieces that you have around. That is I guess the message. I mean, many universities have gone to visit different universities in different countries and trying to imitate and copy the ways they collaborate with the outside world. It doesn't necessarily work because the situation is different. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that this type of collaboration, it takes time to build. And it's not a hocus pocus type of a thing that you do it overnight. You start, it's like personal relations. It takes time to develop. The same thing applies to universities and in collaboration with the industry. So it takes time. You have to be patient. And that's sort of a lesson number two to me. And I hope that my colleagues will comment and if you have any other comments. But I mean, the lesson number one: no, don't copy very successful activities like Stanford or MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. I mean, they have been very, very successful in commercializing research and doing all kinds of things with the industry. But they have the network, the infrastructure there is completely different. You have the financiers, you have the venture capital companies, you have all kinds of activities, and they've been in place for years. So you start playing or working on what's around you. What are the industries near your universities? Who do you have contacts with, and so on. So that's the main message for my presentation, to summarize it. And then I have lots of slides to show it. In this slide, what I'm stating is that first, if there should be a need in the university strategy, one way or the other, that this is important activity. If the university doesn't recognize this type of collaboration as important, then it doesn't happen, or it happens on an individual basis, which is usually the case in for many researchers, and that's fine as such. But I mean, if the university wants to be more active participant in the society, in the region, then it needs to be recognized by the university. And that's the second point in this slide, the top management involvement, so that the top management in the university are interested in and are active in making these links and helping the researchers to, and in their daily life, to collaborate with the outside world. That is something that that I would like to stress, meaning that it has to be on the agenda of the university. It doesn't have, I mean, mainly, I mean, big universities, I mean, it's all about research and education based on that research. But the third mission that we call it is the how to get the businesses and the industries around involved. And that is, at least in the university law in Finland, that there's the third mission activities, and that is important for the research and for education. And I mean, this is especially true in technical and in the business school setting, where you should have close collaboration with the industries around you, and even globally, if that's possible. But it can be done in other areas as well, in humanities and in other fields of science. And that is one message that, I mean, we have a case tomorrow, I remember, I guess it was tomorrow, on that. The anti-bullying program for students in the first grade. But so the universities need to have some sort of a position in the issue. And in our case in Finland, a big sum of the budget comes from external sources, like this project that we are currently online, and from the industry for contract research and things like that. So there have been changes in the budgets of universities, which have geared the universities to collaborate with the industry, with the outside world. The same thing applies with the EU funding. I mean, there's a massive amount of money coming from the European Union, which is geared to collaborative activities, so that the financiers gear the universities to collaborate with the industry. If you need to have a research partner and an industry partner to get the EU funding for many, like Horizon 2020 program or things like that. So the financiers are gearing the universities to collaborate more closely with the industry around them. So there's all kinds of pressures. But if the university is not interested in, or if the top management is not involved, it doesn't work. So that's what we have found when we have gone through many universities, many top universities in Europe. Then when it comes to the university level, in many cases, and we present my colleague Petteri Sinervo will present a case in Albania where we were helping them to start different centers dealing with the industry in the universities. In many cases, and the old model, I guess, was that you build up a separate unit to collaborate with the outside world, and then the everybody doing something else, forget about it, and then it's this external unit's job to collaborate. But I guess my message would be that it's everybody's job in the university, rather than separating that type of activity to a certain body. So we have cases where the universities have a centralized type of an organization, but I mean, it could work in a decentralized way as well. Again, no one size fits all formula here. What is the most important thing in our opinion is that the researchers in the university know the system. How do we collaborate with the outside world? What are the rules and regulations, and what are the ways? I mean, be that legal or whatever, so that they know their own position, and they know how to do it in a proper way. So it's not that we have this centralized, decentralized, one dedicated person, whoever, technology transfer officer in many universities. It can be done in different ways, as I said, in different settings. But I guess the message here would be that we should educate the researchers that, hey, you could collaborate, and it doesn't ruin your science if you collaborate with companies. It might help you in your research activities. And this, I mean, we've faced lots of this discussion about applied science versus pure science, if you like. But in many fields, as I said, like in technology or business school, what is pure science in business school? Because it's not a natural science. There's no, I mean, laws of gravity type of facts. Everything is contextual in a way. But the thing is that in the university setting, the researchers know what's available, what's possible, and what's not type of arrangement. That is how the university internally has organized that type of activity. And again, there's no single formula to be successful. We have seen many different universities being very, very successful in research commercialization in different ways, meaning completely different ways. And so I guess I strongly emphasize that aspect, that don't copy others. Look at your surroundings and infrastructure and activities around you, and then you can be successful. I will move on to the next slide. Then, okay, we have here examples, the names of universities: Leuven in Belgium, Oxford, everybody knows, Gothenburg in Sweden, and Konstanz in Germany. Forget about those names as such. But in all of these universities that we went through, and the case, I mean, the same thing applies to our own university. There's all kinds of support services available. They have been built on during a longer period of time. And so there's all kinds of activities inside the universities that support the researchers to collaborate with the external world. But as I stated, the support services alone is not enough, but they are needed, meaning that many researchers are very good in their own field, as they should be. but they might not know how to build legal contracts with, if you are doing contract research with the industry. So the support services should be there. And in many universities, there are all kinds of support services that can be used and should be involved in these collaborative activities. Then another issue is educational support. The first session last year in this program was more about entrepreneurship innovation issues. So there's different types of angles that different universities have vis-a-vis entrepreneurship education. In certain universities, entrepreneurship education is for everybody, whatever your field of science is. In others, entrepreneurship education is voluntary. It might be available, and that is something that we have been quite active. Business education for non-business school students. I mean, we have been active in European Institute of Technology activity, which is close to MIT arrangement in Europe, where the EU noticed that there are too few startups coming up or popping up from the university research. So we have been active in educating entrepreneurship and innovation issues in the field of IT or ICT in biggest technical universities in Europe on master's and PhD levels. So educating entrepreneurship to non-business school students, because in many business schools, and this has been a trend for a long time, in business schools, entrepreneurship is not a big subject, because in the business school, the students want to become next CEOs of Apple or Microsoft, whereas entrepreneurship has been seen as a teeny tiny issue. But the demand for entrepreneurship education has been huge outside the business school in different departments. People who are studying education might start thinking, oh, should I become a teacher or can I do something else? And entrepreneurship education can help. There are companies coming up from archaeology in Finland, in Turku, where students in archaeology, digging up the old sites, and you can imagine how to commercialize archaeology. And there are these cases where students in archaeology started a successful business, being experts in archaeology, but understanding the business issues. So, but there are different, ways of how the universities cope with this entrepreneurship issue. Some universities have selected programs and general education for everybody when it comes to entrepreneurship, and others might have additional courses. And we have both in University of Turku. We have a major program in the business school in entrepreneurship. But in our department, we are training mostly the non-business school students in entrepreneurship. And it's a completely different ballgame. Because with the business school students, they have the vocabulary and they have the understanding of how the businesses operate. But if you are studying physics, teaching entrepreneurship business issues is completely different. You have to start from scratch, so to speak. So that's something that we have some experience in, and it's been interesting. But so entrepreneurship and innovation education within the university is important. It depends in different universities how they organize it. Then the third point here on this slide is the critical mass. What do you have around you in your university? What's available research-wise, industry-wise, and technology transfer activity-wise? Meaning, what is it that you have around you, rather than copying again the Stanford model, which has been successful as such. But I mean, what's available for you in your own setting, and both basic and applied research? What kind of research there is in your university? What kind of companies and industries are around your university? And what kind of support services and activities you have in your university in order to help the researchers to collaborate? So there needs to be a critical mass, and that is something that the biggest universities that we discussed, like Leuven or Oxford, it's like they have been there for centuries, and there's this critical mass being developed or being built or appeared during a long time. But what is available for your particular university? That is, I mean, what's available? What's outside your university? The critical mass is needed, meaning that there should be enough companies, should be, I mean, because this is a two-way lane in a way, so that the industry understands that you are doing something that could help them in their doing business. So it's not that you are doing something for the companies, it's a two-way lane. And we will have, Professor John Gabriel will talk tomorrow about how to get that type of involvement in the curriculum of your university. So it's a two-way street in a way. It's not that universities are just offering something. You learn, you get all kinds of insights, and it might improve your research by or through collaborating with the outside world. So it's not one-way lane in a way. That's another issue that I want to pinpoint. Let me move forward. Then, of course, it all comes down to funding. What's available? I mean, and it depends again, it's part of the contextual factors. What's available for Stanford University? I mean, in the Silicon Valley, there's the biggest concentration of venture capital companies is there. It's a completely different situation for the university there to operate than in some other parts of the world, like in remote parts of Finland. So what kind of funding is available? As I said earlier, there's a massive EU funding program going on to support university industry collaboration. And then there are national programs and schemes. We have in Finland, used to call Tekes, nowadays Business Finland, which is a big founding organization for R&D projects, and nowadays in innovation in Finland. And they have been quite successful in what they have been doing. So what kind of funding is available? Of course, that has a role in building the university industry collaboration. Is there any funds in the university that can be used? Is university supporting spin-offs, if you like, or not? And are there national, regional financiers, companies that are assisting in finding funding or funding itself, potential spin-offs and startups? But usually, I mean, you need the money, and where's the money? How much is it? And who wants to do whatever with that funding? What are the financiers' interests, and what are the university's interests? Then there should be an incentive for the researchers. It could be monetary gain, so that if a researcher commercializes his or her research, there might be some money getting in but it doesn't have to be. It could be additional funding for the research projects that the researchers are interested in. In many cases, what we have found and when we have discussed with venture capital companies, many researchers who have been successful in their research might not be the best entrepreneurs because they are researchers. They are interested in their research. So they might be interested in starting up something and continue doing research. And then the financiers or the venture capital companies come up and find a CEO or entrepreneur for that company so that the researcher can carry on his or her research, or the group. I mean, in many cases, in the field of medicine, life science, you have larger research groups doing research rather than individual people doing research. So there should be all kinds of different types of incentives. It could be so that a researcher he or she will be free of teaching activities in order to continue the research. I mean, the incentives doesn't have to be monetary. They can come in different ways. But there should be incentives for researchers to try to collaborate with the external world. And then when we talk about technology transfer, I mean, we are not talking only about technology transfer. We are more interested in these third sector activities, collaborative activities, rather than just spinning out some technological finding outside the university. So there's different approaches in different universities, how they see technology transfer, how they use the word technology transfer, or how do they define technology transfer. So what we are suggesting is that you have sort of open eyes and don't get stuck with only technology transfer, but the knowledge transfer, expertise transfer, whatever it is. It doesn't have to deal with technology as such. So that's okay. Me coming from the business school, that's because I know nothing about technology, and I'm bad with technology. So as you saw earlier when I tried to share my screen. So having a wider sort of approach to technology transfer or collaborative arrangements from your university with the outside world. That's the message here. Then, as I said, everything is contextual. What is the role of the individual university in the communities where they are, I mean, geographically and locally, I mean, where they are? What's happening with the outside external world? What kind of activities does the university have in a particular place where the university is? What's going on with the outside world? What kind of links there are? What kind of activities? It could be informal or formal activities where you engage the industries, the companies in different activities in your own university, be that lecturing for students, be that research activity, be that funding certain research. It comes in different shapes and forms, but what are there? What's available? And again, I stress, don't copy the Stanford model, because you don't have the Silicon Valley around you. We don't have the Silicon Valley around you. We have to play with what we have in Turku area and in Finland. Then many of the universities stressed the activities of the science park or incubator activities, so that other places, organizations around the university that can help researchers to commercialize their research findings, what kind of processes there are in the region, within the university and outside the university. Are there science parks? Are there other types of incubation activities in place? And we have close ties with our science park, and there's all kinds of, and what is especially active at the moment in Europe is student-led entrepreneurial movements, meaning that the students are organizing all kinds of events and activities to help other students in the startup world. We organize in Helsinki the world's biggest startup activity, Slush, every November. Slush meaning, you know, wet snow, and because the weather is awful in November in Finland. So, and there's been almost like 20,000 venture capital companies and startup people gathering around for these kinds of activities. And it has been started by the Aalto University in Helsinki and the entrepreneurial movement within the university. It's student-led, student-organized, and the universities usually just support that types of activities. We did the same in our case. Actually, we gave in the Turku Entrepreneurial Society activity, we gave them office space in our premises. And actually, my boss at the time gave them my printer and stuff. I mean, practical help. And they started to organize themselves. And now they are better helping the startups than we old university professors. So that type of activity, be that science park, incubator, or entrepreneurial society activity, these are important. And what we have been doing in our many projects internationally, we have supported the student sort of activity so that they start asking nasty questions in their own universities, that why don't we have this or that? And building from the grassroots level that type of activity, that student-led societies can help the startups, and it's massive. I mean, you can check the slush.org, I guess. I mean, that's the website. I mean, there's you know, everybody who has the money globally, and now the slush activities have been organized in Asia and in different continents, led by students again. And it's a massive activity. So you can check that. And Petteri or Matti can write the web address to the chat, so that you'll see. I mean, it's a massive event. So that is something that, I mean, more than the science park incubator activity, the student-led activity has been a driving force nowadays, I would say, in Finland when it comes to startups and spin-offs. And now the science park is giving facilities and organizing these events organized by students for themselves. Because it's easier for a student to listen to another student that, okay, I did this, I did that. Oh, wow. If an old professor goes in and says, why don't you do this and that? They are like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. So that has been very, very effective activity as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I have been teaching and lecturing in these events, but they are very good in collecting the right people in their events. And there are all kinds of companies, and they have raised lots of money for the startups. So that type of activity, how to support that type of activity in your own university, that is quite important. Then it depends on the examples and atmosphere in the university. I remember when I was a student in the business school a long time ago, I mean, the professors used examples like case Coca-Cola. I was like bored to death. I mean, Coca-Cola is a massive organization. You should have local examples, local entrepreneurial examples, so that everybody can relate themselves to these examples. That, okay, if this person did it, why can't I do it? Meaning, I mean, okay, it could be useful to use Microsoft or Apple or whatever massive organization, or in 10 years, 10 years ago in Finland, Nokia was an example. But I mean, the students can't relate themselves to, or the researchers to, Microsoft, Bill Gates. Oh, it's massive. What about the local companies, local success stories? How do you get them into the education? Get local people that everybody, people are people, but I mean, local examples, so that the students can relate themselves to these activities. I mean, we didn't have those much 30 years ago or 35 years ago when I was a student. Nowadays, we have lots of local research-based examples, which we can use in education and which show the students that you can do all kinds of things while doing research. But don't use only the Microsoft, Apple, all these massive American types of companies. Because, I mean, everybody knows them, but they are pretty useless in different parts of the world because the situations are different. And those companies are old, established, global, and they have resources to all kinds of things. Use the local examples. Who are the local people who have been doing great things? And then sort of an awareness, we use the term awareness raising, meaning that in the university, it should be, I hate to use the word marketing here, but it should be marketed that it's a good thing. It's okay to do all kinds of activities with the outside world. And it's not ruining your science and your research. So building up sort of a positive atmosphere inside the university so that it's fine and okay to collaborate and do projects with companies around you. And that, again, there we need the top management support in the university. And there, that's, I mean, and again, it's a sort of a building process. It takes time. It's not one marketing campaign or one slogan here and there. It's active work. Okay, and it depends whose job is doing that. It could be the sort of a support services job, but it could be everybody's job. So that everybody recognizes that, okay, I could do research with this industry or with these companies, and it's okay and fine. And with the results that benefits the university. And it's not that I'm just getting extra money for myself, but it's part of the day-to-day activity of the researchers and the university. So all kinds of these sort of programs, or that's what has been happening in I mentioned 3 universities there, which we were doing research on: Gothenburg, Leuven, and Oxford. Meaning that there's activities going on all the time, which raises the awareness of collaborative activities. Of course, it's like telling the researchers about the funding possibilities, and there's all kinds of potential activities when raising awareness of the collaborative activities. But there should be something in place, and it should be continuous, and it should be there to stay, rather than one-time marketing campaign within the university. That's what we noticed. And these established old universities have these processes up and running, and they are important for the researchers, so that they are aware of what is happening around me. What can I do with my research? Is there anything commercialized potential in my research, and so on. So that type of activity is important. I move on. Then there was a mention that the sort of a high-tech area where universities have been usually the engines of economic development in different areas, in certain areas where they have been founded. So they have been developing the areas in their own work. So if the university, if the top management, if the strategy of the university is that we will create a high-tech area, or we will, and everybody or most of the people will talk about high-tech area, then it's part of the awareness raising, so that it's that this is something we do high-level stuff, high-level research in our university, and we have top researchers and they know what they are doing. That creates, again, an atmosphere in an area that we are, I mean, everybody can claim that we are a high-tech area, but I mean, it should be in practice. It should be mentioned, and it should be encouraged, and it should be nurtured, if you like. I mean, in a funny example would be, I mean, the opposite, but still it's working, is George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where they built a new office space, new building for the bureaucrats of the university, for the administrators, and they named the building Ivory Tower. I mean, that's ironic, because that's what the many universities have been labeled or named, that you are there in the university as an ivory tower. And they renamed, or they named the building for themselves in a self-ironic way, that yes, we are the ivory tower, but they are very active in collaborating with the outside world. And it's a good university again. And then the last point here is that once you start building your own processes in the development of collaborating with the outside world, it takes time. I mean, you can't do it overnight. And to understand that, I mean, and put sort of a deadlines time-wise, so that, okay, what can we be doing next week? What do we need in the year's time? What about 10 years time? I mean, many of these examples, and I will shortly show you the Leuven example. They started the Science Park activities in 1970s. That's 50 years ago. So it takes time. I mean, you can't change things overnight. And understand and respect the fact that it takes time. And that is something that you have to be patient. That's the idea. You cannot change your own university overnight. it takes time. You need these examples, you need the awareness raising, you need entrepreneurship education, you need all kinds of ingredients in different ways, depending on the history and the industry around your university. That is what is needed. So I'll move on. I'll show two examples. I'll go through the Leuven University in Belgium and University of Oxford. So Leuven is top 10 universities, I guess, globally, or at least in Europe. It's a massive, big university. And how they see, when I started the presentation, I said that the strategy and the top management involvement and commitment are important. So they claim and they say that one of the goals is to promote and support knowledge and technology transfer between them and the outside world. That's in their strategy. And then they are very good in research. But at the same time, they want to get that research used by the companies around. In that particular university, they had a sort of a centralized organization of these issues. It was led by a vice rector, so meaning top management involvement in these activities. So they show that the top guys and girls in their universities are interested in and participating in these activities. And that is important. That's important for the industries, for the companies around the university. That it's not just young business school graduate coming in and talking to our top company people. I mean, it's the top people of the university talking to the top people in the companies. That shows that the university is involved and interested in top-level collaboration. And that is something which I started the whole exercise today. Then they have all kinds of support services, ranging from research funding. There's a system in place where the organization helps individual researchers to find funding and group of researchers to find funding, assisting in research funding applications. They have legal services as we have, and my colleague Petteri Sinervo, who's a lawyer in our university, will talk about legal services, or could talk about for days. But so there's legal services in place for the researchers so that they can understand the IPR activities, so they don't lose things or they don't do stupid mistakes. Because I mean, when it comes to, for example, collaborative research, the industry, the companies have their lawyers, and individual researchers might not know anything about intellectual property rights, or what do we do? Again, there are different laws in different countries when it comes to collaborative research. Who owns the IP? It depends on the contracts, or in different countries, the researchers have the IP rights. In many collaborative research projects, the companies want to get the IP rights for themselves if they are financing the research. And that's understandable. But then in this particular university, they have the legal services to help and assist the researchers when it comes to intellectual property rights, for example. Then they help the researchers with licensing, help the researchers when it comes to spin-offs, how to spin out the university research. And what Leuven, what they said was that the collaborative research is essential part of technology transfer in their case. So they work very, very closely with big companies around them. Actually, many of these big companies are located in the surrounding area. So they do lots of this collaborative research, which is essential for their technology transfer. Then what was stressed here was multidisciplinary research. How to build multidisciplinary research teams. And that's something that was stressed and is, I mean, in the, how should I say, official speeches by most of the universities in Europe or in the US are stating that multidisciplinary research is very, very important. But in many universities, there are so many silos, if you like. The funding goes to different silos, be that department or whatever, that it doesn't support multidisciplinary activities because it's between the silos, if you understand the meaning. So Leuven stressed multidisciplinary research so that you build up research teams with people coming from different backgrounds. I mean, that could have been successful in the case of Nokia, which was very, very successful in Finland, and then it was a massive disaster at the end. I mean, they hired more and more IT specialists. They should have hired psychologists and sociologists and whatever. People with different background who asks nasty questions or difficult questions. Not only the technical people or technological people, but having different types of people in your research team is essential. And in the Leuven case, if the projects were profitable, if you like, which I don't know how we can talk about profitability in collaborative research, but I mean, if the research group were able to save some money in the projects, they got the money for themselves for further research, rather than with like these EU projects that if you don't spend some money, you don't get it. That's it. And there's no surplus or profit. And again, profit is not, might not be the right term here. But I mean, so if the research group was successful and they didn't spend all the money, they got the money for themselves to finance their next projects or their further research. That's an incentive for a researcher. But of course, it depends on the type of funding that the group has. As I said, with the EU, there's no surplus with these projects that where we are now. There are no such a surplus or profit. But in the case of Leuven, that's how they used the activity. That's part of the encouraging and supporting the researchers. Then, when it comes to education, in Leuven, they had business course, sort of a general business course available for non-business school people. So how to teach entrepreneurship for non-business school researchers so that they have at least a basic understanding of how the businesses operate and what could be commercialized in our research. Then they have close cooperation partners. They have their own incubator, and there's a number of science parks or business centers that they are in partnership. So they have formed an environment around the university where this type of collaboration can happen, can take place. They have their own seed capital fund. They are partnering in industrial fund. They are doing close collaboration with 2 major private banks. And then they have a network of regional investors. So they have seen the funding as a very important part of these activities. So they have closed ties with funding organizations. And again, as I said, they started these activities in 50 years ago. So it takes time to form these partnerships. It takes time to get these banks on board, if you like. I mean, it's not one negotiation to get a major private bank to be part in your partnership to finance certain research projects. The same thing applies to private investors or the venture capital companies. You have to convince them that you are doing top-level research in order to get them interested in your activities. So again, the funding angle. Then in certain cases, the university is a stakeholder in these spin-offs. So they have a certain minority share. They own part of these companies, meaning that they are involved, they are interested. They show interest that they are putting their own money in these spin-off activities, research-based spin-off activities. So they put their own money, and then they attract external, as I said earlier, they have close ties with financiers around. So then the private investors are more attractive to these spin-offs when they know that the university has their own money at stake. And what they state, Leuven high-tech area, as I said, there's many science park development organizations around the university. It's a big university by European or by global standard. But they have these high-tech supporting, financing organizations around. And they emphasize that Leuven high-tech, it's a common phrase when they talk about, when they promote the university, when they promote inside the university for the researchers about the activity, so that this is a Leuven high-tech area. And again, how to do that type of promotion? Again, it takes time, and you have to have concrete results. You have to have concrete examples. It's not just like marketers punchline. It's an activity that has been going on for a while. You have practical examples, you have local examples of successful activity, and you emphasize that. So you start talking about experiences, and again, it takes time to get those experiences. Be patient. Then we move to Oxford, which is one of the oldest universities in the world.
Pasi,
Yeah.
may I mention a couple of items?
Oh, go ahead.
Leuven before you move on.
Oh, thank you.
I was there making those interviews, and a couple of items struck me as an nearly unique way of operating, which they had. Firstly is this, that the researchers who create something which can be commercialized, they don't get any personal financial benefit of it unless they leave the university and go to work for that possible spin-off company. But if, for example, they have licensed that technology, the income coming to the university is not going to the researchers, but it remains for the university, and they will convey part of it for this research team so that they can do further research with a funding, and they can self-decide what to use this. And this is quite an I would say nearly odd way of operating, but apparently it works. And in one other aspect is for the universities, it's rather wealthy. For historical reasons, they own land around Leuven, and they have, for example, made deals with the real estate developers that they will build up buildings for technology center, science park, incubator type of a activity, and they will keep it in that activity for certain amount of years, and after that they can go to the free market with the rents which are market based. Before that they have a lower rents for the academic spin-offs or other organizations which are working for in this area. So in that sense, I haven't encountered any other university who would be in that kind of situation with the land owning, and obviously that creates wealth for the university. So, and one more item which you, as you mentioned very early, was the critical mass which needed for the creation of, or which helps, let's put it this way, helps to be successful in technology transfer. One should keep in mind that the university doesn't have to create that critical mass alone. You can do it by networking with the local companies, with the local colleges, with the companies in other areas, creating a joint research teams for those areas which are in universities' focus and which hopefully has some businesses around the university. So it doesn't necessarily have to be within your own university, the large masses of researchers and other people operating in this area. So otherwise, I'm happy with Pasi with your presentation. Only these comments.
Thank you very much, Petteri. That's very good points. Then we move, and you can comment on this Oxford case as well. So University of Oxford, I mean, that's one of the oldest and best known universities in the world. And they have been excellent in basic research. And they didn't have direct reference to strategy as such that they will see the technology transfer as one of their main tasks. But I guess they don't have to, because they are Oxford. So they attract lots of these industrial partners just by being Oxford University. Then they were, okay, as there's a quote, the absolute asset of Oxford lies in the structure that entrepreneurship and innovation matters are organized. So they had a decentralized model in a way, that they stressed the importance of entrepreneurship education, but it was not centralized as such. And dean level involvement in the units, so that the deans, so the top people again, are involved in these activities within the university. Again, showing the outside world that the university sees this activity as important. The Oxford Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation was established almost 20 years ago. And it's a knowledge research and training organization for the university's tech transfer activities. So they put up a Center for Entrepreneurship to help the researchers in commercializing activities. That's what usually happens, and they've done it as well. They have a large range of support services for the researchers, and this is something that what is happening more and more in especially in the US, but it's coming to Europe as well. so that some part of the university finance is coming out of license fees and things like that have been created. I mean, that the result based on the research results that have been created, developed within a certain university. So if they license that stuff outside, they get funding coming into the university, and that type of funding is getting bigger and bigger attention in different parts of the world. It hasn't been that much done in the case of Finland, but yet when we changed the university law in the past, it was, I mean, the universities couldn't own shares or parts of the companies that they have been actively developing. Nowadays, University of Turku, for example, can participate in a similar fashion as in Leuven, so that then it might create licensing and other types of income for the university, because most of the, I mean, funding is coming, as I said earlier, in Finland from the government, plus these third type of activities like the projects, EU projects, development projects, collaborative research projects. So universities can develop income through these activities. And there you might need the support services of the, again, it deals with the intellectual property understanding. So in the case of Oxford, they had the support services, and then they have a company, they started up a company that they own that is in charge of technology transfer and academic consulting for the university. So they build up a separate company which they own that is active in technology transfer activities. As a sort of a sidekick, I could say that when it comes to University of Gothenburg in Sweden, Gothenburg is the second biggest city in Sweden, and it's a twin city for Turku. So I visited that, and they organized these activities in a different way, in an interesting way. So they formed a separate company which is owned by the universities. There are few universities in Gothenburg. There's a Chalmers Technical University and University of Gothenburg. So they formed a separate company which is owned by the universities plus the industry around them, so that they have already, when the researchers come up with something new, they have already the industry partners within the network, because the industry partners are interested in these development activities because they have a stake in that company. So there are different forms and types of forming that collaborative activities. Again, there's no such thing as the right way to do it. It depends on the region, it depends on the legislation, it depends on the industries and culture and all kinds of other issues within a region. In the case of Leuven, they sort of highlighted the importance of multidisciplinary research. In Oxford, they didn't. But they still have lots of these cases where they had people with different backgrounds when it comes to innovation and commercialization activities. In Oxford, they have their own incubators, they have business park facility and contacts to others, because I mean, everybody wants to play with Oxford. And it's the same thing with like MIT or Stanford or any of these big successful universities. They attract companies and other universities to collaborate because they have been very, very successful. In the case of Oxford, they have their own funds, but what they stated is that the connections and links and the networking, which Petteri earlier mentioned in the case of Leuven, the same thing applies to Oxford. As I said, I mean, it attracts top universities, top companies to collaborate because it's Oxford. The same thing applies to Cambridge. The same thing applies to many of the big universities in the world, so that they can show that they have been successful in their research. They have been successful in all kinds of issues. So it's an interesting partner. So doing that type of networking is important. They have own funds, but they have contacts to external financiers, as was the case of Leuven. So they can invest as a university through that company, plus they have opened doors for other financiers within the region and nationally and globally, so that if there's interesting invention being commercialized, it can help in finding funding. They were talking, they were using, I mean, terms like raising entrepreneurship awareness, or in the English language, enterprising type of approach was within the talks or discussions in the university. So stressing the entrepreneurial activity or enterprising, which they use in English, which is, I'm not sure if it's the definition is the same. We will hear about that when John comes in. But I mean, so it's not, so to speak, it's not bad to be entrepreneurial, to commercialize what you do. Whereas we've seen in many cases in our own university and different universities that there are sort of like 50-50 approaches when it comes to professors in the universities. Half of the people, and this is generalizing a lot, it depends on the university. Half of the professors might feel that collaborating with the outside world is ruining my pure science. And half of the people are appreciating the collaboration. So what we have learned is that work with those who see the collaboration as successful and fruitful. Don't try to turn the non-active pure science people into more sort of innovative entrepreneurial types of people. They don't. But there's always people in any university who can see the potential of this collaboration as useful, fruitful, and adding something to the research as well. So it's a two-way street. In the case of Oxford, they didn't have any entrepreneurship education as such, or module as such. And what we saw that they should have or could have, whereas in many of these others, and the same thing applies to our university nowadays, that the entrepreneurship education is encouraged for non-business school students, for PhD students, so that the researchers have an awareness of what could be commercialization potential in my research or in my group's research. But in the case of Oxford, they didn't have it as a module or as a sort of a main educational instrument, if you like. In certain universities, they have. And as I mentioned earlier, the European Institute of Technology activities, or EIT Digital, which is what it is called now, so that in the biggest technical universities in Europe, all major students and PhD students will get a module of innovation and entrepreneurship. And we were developing the module for the PhD students so that they have to study a certain amount of innovation and entrepreneurship stuff when they do their masters or PhDs in the biggest technical universities, because that was what the EU saw, that Europe is lacking new startups coming from high-tech areas, that we are sort of lacking behind of the situation in the US. And so that's when the EU started to develop these activities. There's a similar activities going on with the climate change, something similar going on with the sustainable energy, that type of development activities, massive €1 billion activities in Europe. And innovation and entrepreneurship education is high on the agenda in order to support and activate the researchers in the field. That was the last one. Do you have, Petteri, anything to say or any comments?
Yeah, just few. First of all, I spent 9 hours interviewing people and getting documents and other stuff from Oxford, and their system was, and I guess still is, difficult to comprehend. It is very complex. Getting a good picture of who is doing what is quite difficult, because I met maybe 10 people and they appear to, many of them, operate in a certain field relating to this research result utilization and business, university business, university industry activities. But of course it appears to work, but as Pasi said, it is Oxford University, one of the most prestige universities in the world, so many organizations wishes to work with them. So it's rather easy for them to do it compared to us in Turku, for example. And second item, which was the kind of supporting education, business education especially for non-business students. They had themselves had also noticed that that is something which they would like to have more, short courses or maybe longer ones. But the problem was that because of their hundreds of years of tradition, these curriculums of each exam is so tight and so narrowed to the certain fields that they had difficulties to get anything new into those curriculums. And I believe that might change or might not change very easily. But these comments to add to your good presentation.
Thank you, Petteri. And that's an example, because I mean, University of Turku is not Oxford, as Petteri said. And it's the same thing with the challenges that you might have in your own own setting. You are not Oxford, you are not Stanford, you are not MIT. Like University of Turku is not one of those most cited or the best universities in the world according to certain rankings. Okay, I don't like the rankings as such, but I mean, they have some prestige and they have some of relevance in many cases. So I would like to, I mean, we are getting back to the schedule, which is good. And what I wanted to stress in this presentation was there's no single formula that works anywhere. Don't copy the existing. I mean, you can copy somewhat from different universities, and you can learn how others are doing, and then use it, what is the most suitable way for your own university. But again, it depends, as I said earlier, it depends on the contextual situation, what kind of industries there are around, what kind of relations your university already has with the external world, what kind of links do you have, you know, funding links, do you have, what kind of organization do you have? It depends on a number of issues. I wanted to highlight, and Petteri highlighted them more. I mean, that it's a combination of issues that can be developed and should be developed. Another issue is it takes time. You can't do it overnight. You can't change the governance of a university, or you can't change the heads of the top management just like that. I mean, it depends on the top management, it depends on the strategy of the university, it depends many factors. And there's no winning formula. What works in your particular cases might not work in Europe, or what works in Leuven or Oxford or in Turku or in Bologna might not work in your circumstances. So and I stress this. I mean, you can learn, of course, you can learn from the examples of others. But what is more, you have to find out the most suitable forms of these activities for your universities, rather than just doing the exact same as what has been done in somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Asia or somewhere in the US. And that's I guess I've stressed, I've said it like 4 times now, but I'm a strong believer of that. So that you build your own model based on certain things that we have shown. And again, it takes time. But that's how I see it. And I guess I've stressed what I see as important in my presentation. And we will have shortly, if I'm the chair now, we have 1 minute, and then we will have a 15-minute coffee time break. But any comments based on the first part of the day? The floor is yours. Any comments, any reflections, any ideas, any complaints? We will continue this in the breakout rooms, of course. And this is something that I want you to discuss later today. That what parts or what kind of activities, was there anything usable for you? Something that you already do? Any room for improvement and so on? Do you want any comments? There's Irmina and John.
Yes.
Irmina, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pasi. I know for the model, we cannot use all for the model from one university, but we must justify how is suitable for our university. My question is how maybe you can give me or give us advice or one way example to get funding from industry, because here is for research together with industry is quite difficult, because industry not much trust with research from university. Maybe yeah, from your experience, maybe you can give us advice how to get funding with industry. This is my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to answer because I don't know the situation of your university as such, but I mean,
Yes.
I mean, I guess the only answer, which might sound stupid, is that it takes time, and you just need to start collaborating, networking, talking to people, visiting companies, visiting the funding organizations, making sure that they know what they do and what do you have in high quality stuff that you would want to develop. But
Okay.
it's a long process.
Pasi, may I?
Go ahead.
Always, if thinking of getting money from the companies will pay for something which they assess that is valuable for them. It can be research result, it can be joint research, it can be contract research, it can be science-based consulting. Thinking that what can you offer them, what they need, what they are ready to pay for. That is probably the. Then of course there are these funded programs which can provide funding for the cooperation, collaborative research type of thing.
Yeah, good. John, what did you have in mind? Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you, Pasi. I know we've only got a few seconds left, but I did want to just make one quick comment. Thank you for your presentations. I found them really useful, and I completely agree with your thesis of, in the importance of context. And in regard to that, my reflection was thinking about your PhD in shipbuilding, and I was reading about Turku and thinking that it was, or reading that it was the capital of the shipbuilding industry in Finland, and thought maybe there was a connection there between your own research and the regional economy. And the second question I just wanted to say was, I know from my experience of my links in the University of Oxford, one of the most important features of the relationships that they have with industry, which is, as you've rightly said, and Petri said, it's not about them having to be too proactive. People come to them. And one of the groups of people that come to them are their alumni. And the relationships between alumni are very important, particularly for prestigious universities like Oxford, because they have a lot of very influential people amongst their network of contacts, and some very rich people amongst their network of contacts who are very willing to fund them.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was a good point. I mean, we saw the same thing with Cambridge. I mean, they had a nice sort of a slideshow showing the network of the alumni and coming from the 1950 up to today, where this person and this person joined forces and they started this company which was successful, and then they joined forces with these other people, and so they had, and they showed the alumni and the importance of certain individuals, and that was amazing, and we should do the same. They have been successful entrepreneurs based on the research in our own university. And we have been collecting that information, but we don't have it as ready as they had in Cambridge, where it was a nice picture of or developing picture of certain networks where you had a number of names and more names coming in, and who's with whom and what did they start, and that was because that shows the researchers and that the students that, okay, this is what we have been doing here for decades,
Yeah.
and all kinds of things can be done, and that was a nice piece of sort of presentation. When it comes to shipbuilding industry, we built the biggest luxury cruisers in the world in Turku. So I mean, not those cargo ships that one of them was stuck in the mud in Suez, but the luxury Caribbean cruisers. That's what we do in the city of Turku, and that's what I was working with when I did my PhD a long time ago.
Pasi, I'm desperate for coffee now.
You are desperate. Okay, so we end up now for a while.
One person raise hand. Pasi? Afandi, raise hand. One person raise hand.
Okay. I didn't see who raised hand.
Ahmad Afandi
Was,
already raised hand.
okay, I did.
I just put in raise hand because cannot find the button. Okay, we are in ITS. We start learning or doing the university engagement, starting from providing the service of consulting on problem solving for industry. So starting from that, we try to get the collaboration. But yeah, we learned that not many industries do the research and development. So that's the problem. So it does operating. So our project mostly on the problem solving in management and technical matter, but not for R&D. They don't have enough spending on R&D. So, but however, due to university, thanks to university, we still do the R&D activity using our budget and from the Minister of the Research, but not many. But recently we are starting a new era that the government provide incentive to collaborate between industry and university, and providing small incentives to work together and to make the industry think on research and development, new product development, and etc. So just a new mode of activity. The difficulties of starting research and development something. Yeah, we learned that the researcher in university, they don't talk many to industry, so they make their own problem and they put their solution to the Scopus, not for the patent or intellectual property. That's the situation in Indonesia. But we start in 2020 to engage in university business, but focus on the collaboration and design and research and development. Yeah, we learned that it is not easy because lack of the experience in industries, and also from us, they ask many close to the product development, not research and R&D. So we have no enough time to provide the solution then, but we have to learn first their environment. That is new way. That is our experience. However, but it is interesting.
And I mean, I agree with you. I mean, but what you said, that you help the companies in their problem solving and things like that, that's collaboration. That's what we want to, because I mean, R&D activities and being collaborative in R&D activities with the industry, that's one thing. but it comes in different forms, and that type of consulting or problem solving or assisting the companies is important. Once they learn that you can help them in their problem solving, they might come back to you when they face an R&D problem, for example. But that it takes time, as you said. I mean, and you have to start
Yes.
building from somewhere. But now
Yes.
I shut my mouth and get some coffee. We have like 4 minutes. Oh, that's a fast coffee break.
Only 4 minutes.
But we continue at 1 o'clock Finnish time, 12 o'clock Central European time, and what is it in Indonesia?
Just 4 minutes for your the coffee.
Yeah. Okay. See you soon.
Okay.
See you.
In
Thank
5
you.
minutes. Yeah. Please take coffee. Everybody. Only 5 minutes.
Lek kono sembarang nggak iso disambi, lek kene ngopi ambek rapat yo iso terus ae.
Iya terus aja gini. Mas sampai maem ya iso.
Ya iso. Lek kono nggak iso.
Indonesia multitasking, Prof.
Kita nggak menikmati sesuatu kita memang. Ya Allah, ya apa meneh. Mereka
Di sana hidupku penuh aturan.
kafe ya, nikmati betul kopinya.
Ini 5 menit kita mulai. Ya ampun. Mereka on time, enggak mau. Waktunya sudah diambil, maka waktunya jadi sedikit.
Iya. Jadi kita hormatilah untuk menghargai waktu kalau sama mereka.
Iya. Jadi nanti habis ini yang jam 17 Albania Alma Mater Studio Forum Knowledge Approach. Nah ini
Tadi yang bicara Italia sama Turku ya? Belum jam berapa?
pasti Malinen.
Mohon izin sholat dulu nggih.
Oh ya silahkan.
Pak Aklus sehat, Pak Aklus habis vaksin.
Oh, alhamdulillah sehat.
Ini ditulis di proses nih. Mana? Kamu kan udah tahu ya prosesnya ya.
Bapaknya ngantuk ya Pak, aku ngantuk
Sama seleksi.
Iya, bawaannya ngantuk memang.
Ini persiapan, tahapan
30
persiapan,
menit habis vaksin.
laksanakan.
Minum air putih yang cukup.
Ini tahapan persiapan dulu kamu narasikan. Misalkan, ya belajar. Itu yang menyebut.
Nanti 3 hari ya Bu ya, workshopnya.
Iya. Pak Makus enggak punya ini ya background ya? Pak Maksus. Pak Baru.
Oh, Pak Mas. Mbak aku lihat kayak background lucu ini gawe komputer lawas sih soalnya, jadi
Nggak bisa.
hilang wajah.
Nggak bisa ya Pak ya?
Ya metune ngene piye? Background.
Medeni, Pak.
Ini.
Oh, ini kajengnya mawon, Pon.
Ini tadi sudah absen semua, yang absen 30.
Ampun.
Link presensi, ngisi link presensi.
Ampun saya.
Saya kirim ya link presensinya, pakai chat.
Yang smart aja, Prof.
Nggak, saya kirim chat ya. Oh smart.
Oh, di sini aja mungkin barangkali mereka belum ngisi juga, nggak apa-apa.
Oke, tak kirim lagi.
Oh.
Saya sudah apa belum?
Sudah.
Pon.
Terus tak kirim juga di smart.
Oh, sudah, saya sudah tadi. Uang Turku KB Bu ya pembicaranya.
Ya karena tugasnya Turku. Dulu kan Bolonya.
Oh. Iya. Turku itu apa ya? Ning kono produknya terkenal e.
Finlandia, dek iku apik nok ngene iki Pak, inkubator.
Di mana?
Oh.
Inkubatornya bagus. Terus apa di sana aku ambil dengan perusahaan-perusahaan ya Toshiba, perusahaan-perusahaan gede. Jadi itu apa di gedung inkubator itu tempelannya itu merek-merek terkenal. Saya fotonya ada ya, tak cari sebentar.
Mitra industri ya jadi yang
Iya.
Kita batal ke Turku pasti nih ya.
Apa?
Kita batal ke Turku, gak jadi ya ke Turkunya.
Iya, kayak enggak boleh.
Alah.
Ini kayaknya sampai tahun depan ini nggak ke sana ini.
Iya. Ya nasib pas ini enggak bisa. Ya kan nggak pada saat proposal nggak tahu kalau akan ada corona Pak.
Iya.
Masuk.
Gak tahu ya gak jadi dia. Gak tahu.
Dialihkan ke peralatan aja dananya.
Ya nanti minta tak ini kan ke peralatan.
Di akhir tahun nih, di tahun ketiga.
Okay, did you get your coffee? You can continue.
Yes.
According to the program, let me check it. Yeah, we have now 2 cases. One from our perspective, where my colleague Petteri Sinervo will present, and then we have University of Bologna case of the knowledge transfer approach. What I especially like is the term knowledge transfer rather than technology transfer, because this is something that we will talk. So we have 1 hour to play with. If we have like 15 minutes each presentation, and then we have half an hour for the breakout rooms.
Okay.
And to summarize it, but I give the floor to Petteri so that he can present the
Boleh pakai materai 12 gitu karena nggak ada
building up regional development center. The floor is yours. Is Petteri here?
Already this as co-host. Yeah.
Nowhere to be seen, but I mean, Petteri.
This is Petteri.
Okay, we'll wait for a second. And then, I mean, as I suggested earlier, that once we have the breakout rooms, I mean, okay. I hope that you will use your own language for a while. Me and John will be completely lost, but I mean, if it's easier for you to start reflecting what was useful for you today, and then we summarize it in English. That's my suggestion for the breakout rooms. But now Petteri is present, so Petteri, go ahead. 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one moment. I will find my slides first.
That helps.
Yeah. You should now see them, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. As written, I'm Petteri Sinervo, legal counsel currently in the University of Turku. Prior, mainly using legal stuff nowadays, but I have several years before starting this job. I have done different kind of projects concerning mainly with the university's third mission activities and business development and industry interaction. Prior joining the university, I was working for the software industry. So my experience is, I'm showing today and also tomorrow a couple of cases, projects we have done, and hopefully you will find something useful of them. The first case relates to Albania. Building up regional development centers is the title. And actually the project was larger. It was concerning the third mission activities in the Albanian universities. It was initiated, or the idea came from the couple of Albanian universities, and they contacted the Ministry of Education and some of their friends in Spain. And so the consortium was organized. There were universities of Leon and Valencia from Spain, University of Turku, and then Polytechnical University of Turin in Italy from the EU side, and then all the 7 public universities in Albania. And the general idea was to develop these third mission activities that will say technology or knowledge transfer is one, then the lifelong learning or adult education, if you like, is the second, and all other kind of societal interaction is the third part of the third mission activities. My presentation now concentrates solely on this knowledge transfer or technology transfer activity development we had, and mainly also presenting a tool or one way of approaching this issue. We, on the background of the framework, we had this a Dutch professor De Pekkere, who had published this some more than 10 years ago already, maybe a bit outdated, but it was very practical for our purposes because one of the first things for us was to find out that what is the situation, what kind of activities there are in these Albanian universities currently, so that we can get a picture that at what level of activities they are and how do we start to build up and what we can build up, what is a feasible, what is practical, what is possible to do. And so we decided to apply business plan approach. My background is also in the business school, and I have a degree from there as well. So, and our team was, all of them had a background from business school. So it was an easy way to take this tool into practice. We could have, of course, named it as a operational plan or whatever, but we decided to stuck with the business plan because it highlighted certain items in this approach. It was a clear way of operating, clear methodology. It's a structured way of covering items, making the first background check and the level check, and then thinking at what universities can develop and what can they offer, who are their partners, how can we reach them, and it really puts the customer or user or partner, whatever name you wish to use, in focus. And we have it in 6 chapters. And the first 0 chapter was mission statement. That was a making and plan and kind of, well, we didn't do it, but the Albanian universities had to do it internally, that they were sure that these activities are such that they are accepted and they can be integrated in the university's goals. What we also try to emphasize that you don't have to get the university strategy rewritten. You can introduce these activities into the current strategies and start to operate without having to do a lot of strategic planning work first. The second phase was the analyzing the university itself, of course, but also the surroundings and the area in which they are operating. It doesn't have to be only the close geographical area, because it can be also thinking that with whom they are currently already partnering and operating. So identifying what the university can offer. It has resources. They are mainly used, of course, for research and education, but how could they be, can we exploit some of those for these third mission or technology transfer activities? They have know-how. Can that be used for some sort of a science-based consulting type of activity? They have facilities, infrastructure. Can that be jointly used by some of the local organizations? And they create intellectual property. How is that handled now, and can it be used? And then, of course, looking at the business environment, the region, of course, is important, but also the potential partners they have. We have to keep in mind now that we just a moment ago talk about Leuven and Oxford, that these universities really are not Leuven or Oxford. They are young, relatively more small universities, and Albania is in the southeast part of Europe, developing, but still its economy is quite one-sided. They have some old industry and agriculture, and the tourism is one which is raising or was raising before this COVID-19 pandemic. So the economic life, economic structure is not that well developed. Then, based on that, what university has to offer, defining what kind of services there could be. For example, can we create a database of their research findings and their educational courses, and for their publications in a certain field of science, and get that database used or useful for the local community. And then there are others which I already mentioned, science-based consulting, for example. Very important part of this was this, which have now named here marketing plan. How Pasi mentioned that he doesn't like the word marketing, but it was a good word to use here because it's highlighted what we wanted these universities to think. Of course, based on the results we had for the university and business environment, identifying some product service ideas, and then thinking that who are the potential customers, users, and how can we reach them? Now I'm using the word customer, but you have to understand this, it could be a user. It doesn't have to be commercial cooperation. It can be a cooperation with the local municipalities. It can be cooperation with the public healthcare. It can be or social or some social services. So it doesn't have to involve a product we are selling, but we are utilizing the university's know-how to benefit the society at large. And what we did actually was a sort of a manual for persons that how could they investigate and identify these customers and also the potential products, and because that was kind of expected from us. The last was thinking that what kind of functions are needed to operate, managing the customer or user or partner surface, and also what kind of support services does these kind of operations require, especially communication within and outside the university, and then financial management, that looking at the cash flow and budgeting and calculating at what can we afford to do. One item which was actually decided already when the project started, that whether virtual or physical organization would be a good one. It was decided that there will be these physical development centers. That probably is not a very modern thinking, but that was what the Albanians, especially the ministry, wanted. So that was what was built up then. And as Pasi mentioned earlier today, that this centralized one office might be something that isolates the operation from the rest of the university. In this case, it was probably anyway good because it made this action visible. Creating this one was something concrete and everybody could see it. Then it depends on what kind of team is starting to operate that. Are they active enough? Do they go around the campus and trumpet their message? Then the final part was, of course, scheduling the operations and and in this of the natural thing, and what are the available resources, and then making a certain kind of action plan that you have scheduled actions step by step, what shall be done first and what thereafter. And now my conclusions, I have 2 minutes if I remember correctly. It was a structured way to build this plan, and it may lead into too rigid process. Thinking of it, it requires flexibility anyway. But in general, it was a working operational model. Small steps, examples at atmosphere that has been mentioned already. And the outcome is really affected by how dedicated those people are who are starting to do this work in these Albanian cases, because there wasn't that much to build on which to build, but we had to start from the scratch. And now, after we're thinking of how we succeeded in this process, there quite nicely, I would say. But of course, the ministry required that all the universities would participate in this project. And that meant that maybe 2 of them, they didn't have the kind of dedication and they, if not, they were not enthusiastic about this project. Let's put it that way. And that obviously led that the results in these 2 were not that satisfactory. The other 5 universities, it went rather well, and 2 of them extremely well. I mean, doing this project and looking at what kind of results we get and how sustainable they are, they're often is a one could hope that the results are better and more sustainable. But in this case, for a couple of those universities, they were great, and they have expanded its operations. We are now working with these universities in another project, and it's nice to follow that how these regional centers, which started the operations some would I say 4 or 5 years ago, how they are operating in a couple of these universities, and how they have expanded the operations, and how they have now cases of success to show. This was my short presentation for today, and let's see if there is in the later, before we conclude today, some time for questions. But now I will leave the floor to the next speakers.
Okay, thank you, Petteri. Now we have the case from the University of Bologna, and we can have discussion and questions later, but let's give the floor to Bologna.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can see me, and apologies, but there was no way that I could put the background in the right direction. Sorry, there must be some problem with my computer. Again, good afternoon. I'm Alessandra Bacigotti, and I work at the Knowledge Transfer Office of the University of Bologna. Very happy to be here with you, although only online, unfortunately. I hope you can already see my screen that I try to share. My presentation, it will be me and Andrea. I think he's also somewhere in the Zoom gallery.
Yes,
I will try to be. Okay, thank you. I'll try to be very quick because we are running short of time. So our presentation today is about the knowledge transfer approach here at our university, at the University of Bologna. And we are going to cover this under 4 dimensions. So we're going to talk a little bit about the context, because we really agree a lot with what Pasi mentioned earlier, so that the context really matters. So there's no one model that could really fit all the institutions, all the organizations. Then we are going to talk a bit about the strategy at Unibo. And again, good point, Pasi, having a strategy in place in the university is really a very important ingredient in the whole matter. And then we're just very quickly covering policies and diving a bit into our organizational model. So the context, well, and again, this was already raised, this point about timing. So technology transfer, knowledge transfer is quite a recent concept at national level here in Italy. So I think we started talking about technology transfer back the beginning of 2000. And then this concept evolved in the past 20 years. So basically, after starting from technology transfer, we very soon realized that it's not very much about knowledge transfer, because you don't have to transfer technologies, only you have to transfer knowledge in general. But then beginning of 2010, in the policy and law environment here in Italy, the concept was enlarged to third mission activities, so all activities that come out of the university and bring benefits to society and to economy. And I think that the very last frontier of the debate here is impact. So we are more and more talking about impact. So from technology transfer, which is a more restricted concept, which has been diluted in the bigger picture that is developing at political level here in Italy. And this is also reflected in what we have here is an evaluation of the performance of the universities in terms of research and third mission activities. This is very similar to the UK REF. I don't know if you are familiar with this. There's John here who might give you information. So it's the research evaluation framework. It's an exercise that is done at national level to assess the performance of universities in these areas. And our own exercise, it's called BQR. And if you look at the evolution of the metrics that was used to assess technology transfer, knowledge transfer, third mission, you might appreciate that we moved from a more focused idea of tech transfer to be measured by counting basically the money that comes in from sponsored research, the number of patents, the number of spin-offs. This has moved towards a more large vision in the middle period here, when we started also to look at other KPIs to support the assessment of these activities. And finally, to the current exercise, we are in the middle of this process in this moment, which you can see here at the bottom, there are a number of other areas which refer to third mission, but it's outside the core tech transfer and knowledge transfer. And you might see even visually that this area here expanded. And another interesting point that I would like to make is that in the first two exercises, the metrics was really based on quantitative KPIs. So numbers, number of patents, money coming in from licensing, number of collaborations. But now the current VQR exercise is based on the assessment of case studies. So we are like copying a bit what was done in the UK. So it's a qualitative assessment of knowledge transfer and third mission activities in general. So this is the kind of picture that we have around the university, and which is very much drives the process that we are following internally. Another piece of the context is where we are doing tech transfer, knowledge transfer in our university. Our university is placed in a region which is a relatively wealthy region, manufacturing, has a strong manufacturing system, so strong company sector. It's an innovative region, and not the top of the innovative European regions, but still a moderate innovator according to the regional innovation scoreboard, which is an assessment that is done at European level for all the regions. And here again, you might find indicators of the performance of the different regions. So what I'm trying to say is that, as Pasi was also mentioning, doing knowledge transfer in Bologna in that policy context that I described, and in a region which has certain features, is something that is really certainly different from doing knowledge transfer in Indonesia, in your own regions, with the features that your context presents. And when we come to the strategy now, the strategy of the university, the strategy is included in what is called a strategic plan, which is usually done every 3 years. And you find here a major objective that we have, which is to improve the transfer of technologies and knowledge in favor of society and economy. So this is one of the objectives that is included in a strategic plan, among many others, which relate to the different areas of activity of the university in education, research, and third mission. And the objectives are then declined into more specific areas of activities and actions. They are also linked to the Sustainable Development Goals that you are certainly familiar with that, and there are a number of indicators which help us measure the way that we progress towards the achievement of the objectives. So in this case, it's you see the usual suspects, such as number of patents, of IPRs, number of spin-offs and startups, and the turnover that is gained by the university from sponsored research activity. Then coming closer to what we do every day, we have policies, of course. Having policies is something that is really relevant, because it means that the university creates the regulatory framework that supports researchers, that create the conditions that researchers can work in these topics of knowledge transfer, but at the same time creates also the condition for the university to interact with the companies and with the external stakeholders. So these are some of the policies that relate to technology transfer and knowledge transfer. First of all, we have a regulation on management of intellectual property rights. We have also regulation that concerns entrepreneurship activities, and I know that you already discussed with my colleagues on the occasion of the previous training. You discuss a lot about this, so I will not go into the details here. And then we have policies, so guidelines to manage collaborations with companies, and in particular, what is called sponsored research activities, so research that is funded by the companies. And we also defined a policy for doctorates when companies invest in funding doctorate courses. Then now we look in the last part of this presentation, we are looking at the organizational model. So again, our office, the Knowledge Transfer Office, is just part of what I call a local ecosystem. It means that it's placed not only in a structure within the university central administration, but there is also a number of other organizations, other stakeholders around itself, which is the, for example, the incubator, which is a students association. We have also an external foundation that takes care of some of the knowledge transfer related activities. There are a number of initiatives that you have got to know when you attended the previous training. So it's important that everything is put into the context again. Now coming to I'm getting closer and closer, focusing more and more on the, you know, I started from the context and then coming closer to our small organization. So the Knowledge Transfer Office of the university is placed within a department, which again has changed in the last few years. And I think the change in the organization and even in the name, you can see we started having a department which was called Research and Technology Transfer. And now we have a department which is called Corporate Relations, Third Mission and Communication Department. So this kind of organization, I would say that reflects very much the conditions, the context where we are moving and that I described at the beginning of this presentation. I will not go into the details here. We have a number of activities in the area. We follow a number of processes which relates to not only to the core knowledge transfer business, which is relationship with companies, intellectual property management, and entrepreneurship. We have also offices dealing with job placement, with communication, with brand management. So this is a number of services that are grouped together under the same umbrella of the Third Mission Department. The Knowledge Transfer Office is organized along three major lines of activities, which are intellectual property protection, intellectual property exploitation, and entrepreneurship. And you met my colleagues from the entrepreneurship department last time. So this organization, this is the, let's say, the formal organization that follows the process from research to the market. So basically, this is the kind of structure that we were given when the office was created, and it was more recently implemented with the entrepreneurship pillar. But then what happened a few years ago, we were starting to discuss whether this organizational model is really what is makes sense in our organization, or if we could evolve to a more effective and efficient model. I don't think I will have the time to go into the details here, but just to give you a flavor of what we were discussing internally, we realized the importance of becoming more specialized depending on the areas of research. So you might remember that University of Bologna is a general university covering all the areas, all the disciplines. And of course, technology transfer, knowledge transfer is a really different job if you do that in the social sciences and humanities area, as opposed to robotics or life science. So this is a kind of situation that we would wanted to capture in our organization. And we also realized that it's not only about filing patent applications and counting them, it's very much about building business cases on that IPR. So, and we still want to develop a more collaborative approach with our researchers, who are not just our clients, but they should become our partners, to be more and more involved in the organization, in the process of knowledge transfer. So what we are have been piloting for a couple of years, is an organization which is actually split into thematic areas. You can see here the four areas, but then these thematic areas, they interact with the processes that we've seen before, so intellectual property protection, exploitation, and then we have a couple of transversal services that support the whole knowledge transfer process, which is the legal stuff and administration and data management. What I'm telling you here relates, sorry, I forgot to mention this, relates especially to the intellectual property protection and intellectual property exploitation part of the knowledge transfer office, because you already discussed the entrepreneurship pillar the last trainings. These are some facts and figures about our, let's say, performance in this area. We have more or less 170 patent families. We are also very strong in the plant breeders' rights business, so protecting new plant varieties for the agriculture sector. And we are also managing proof of concept funding, which is funding to increase the maturity level and the development of the technologies. We have the part of our patent portfolio and plant variety portfolio out licensed to companies. And now I have a very last slide, which is what we are, the kind of evolution. We have been talking about evolution of the context, evolution of the organization at university level. And if we look at our own knowledge transfer office, the kind of evolution that we have seen in the years. The office was established in more or less 15 years ago. What we have seen is that things have changed quite a lot recently. In the past few years, there's an increase. The change has been faster than it was in the first period, and we are, as I mentioned, we are no longer dealing just with patents. So we have developed a more consolidated structure for university enterprise relationships, and my colleague will talk about this tomorrow. We have added this entrepreneurial strategy, which is very strong at the moment. We have managed to secure proof of concept funding, which is Italian universities. And then we have trying to develop stronger skills and experience in the clinical translation research. So transferring research results in the life science area. What we are not there yet, where we are not there yet, is about what Pasi really cares for. So knowledge transfer in the social sciences, arts and humanities areas. But this is which should be very important for a university as ours, where 40% of the academics work in that area. But it's still something that we are working on to implement in our business, in our knowledge transfer office. And finally, this is a picture from all my colleagues here, and I put in the title, "It's all about the people." Yes, I think that's really an important point that I would like to raise, is that knowledge transfer is a very relational business, and the skills and the competencies of the people really matter. So it's about the context, it's about the timing, but it's also very much about the people. And I leave you with this comic, which is not from me. I took it from our colleague Tom Hockaday from Oxford, by the way. And technology transfer is still difficult, I would say. Yes, it is. So thank you. And me and Andrea, we will be here for the breakout rooms and also on Wednesday. And feel free to ask questions and anything you want to know.
Thank you very much. And it's all about the tradition. I don't know if you saw, but the University of Bologna was founded 1088, so it's almost 1,000 years old. So it's older, a few hundred years older than Oxford, which we were, praising earlier. So I mean,
yeah, but
it's all about tradition as well. You said that it's all about people, but it's all about tradition and history and whatever. So I mean, that's impressive. Any questions or comments?
The bad luck is that our KTO is much younger than Oxford KTO or TTO, or actually Oxford Innovation.
Yeah. But I mean, but still, I mean, that's impressive. So I mean, luckily we have you on board. Any questions? Thank you for both of you. Any questions for the presenters, or are we breaking out to the breakout rooms? So how do we, is Dr. Irmina, are you organizing the breakout rooms? And as I said, my suggestion was that, I mean, we have like 20 minutes to play with.
Can we stop now?
Yeah, I mean, if we are according to the schedule. So my suggestion was and is that we have in these two breakout rooms,
okay,
we have a short discussion in your own language. I mean, with the people that, what did you learn today? What can you take home from today's session? And then we conclude that in English, and then we present it to both breakout rooms. So that's my wish, that if it's easier for you to have a discussion in your own language, and me and John and the others, we cannot participate, unfortunately, but that would be,
okay,
I guess,
I will. Yeah, I open breakout room. Yeah, now.
Okay.
Pak, join di room 2, Pak Yusron. Silakan join di room 2.
Room 2 itu ya?
Iya, ada perintah kan?
Oh, saya tadi sudah masuk, terus kok sedikit orang, terus saya keluar lagi.
Oh, belum, kan masih diproses. Silakan masuk, Pak.
Ya, saya
join
masuk lagi. Ya.
Grup 2.
Oke.
Nggak bisa?
Bentar. Kok malah lip meeting keluarnya?
Bentar. Bentar ya. Bentar Pak, jangan dulu ya, sebentar.
Yeah, because I was afraid of losing the whole connection.
If you leave breakout rooms, not lose. Okay, I will join to
wait for John and the rest, because I mean there was a lively discussion in the local language, which I couldn't understand a word, of course, but I mean that's understandable. But I got a nice sort of a short summary. What was the takeaways for today's discussion? So once the other people from the other room are available, then I will summarize our breakout room. And Alessandra needed to leave, as she sent in the chat, so that we will shortly summarize today's session, and then everybody is free to prepare for tomorrow's day. It's been quite actually good discussion so far. And 2 days to come. So is John here? Not yet. We'll wait for a while for the other group.
Udah aku.
John is there. Okay. So, John, my suggestion is that, I mean, we concluded in our breakout session the discussion and sort of a findings, what they can take away from today's discussion. So I will summarize it shortly, and please, if you can do the same, and then we might have a few words and then and comments, and then we start continuing, I mean, ending the session. So in our breakout room, I mean, people were speaking in their local or native language, which I couldn't understand a word, which is obvious. But it was a lively discussion as far as I follow it. So the comments were that one of the problems of doing anything is the bureaucracy in the university. So that is a global phenomenon. It's not only in Indonesia. I mean, we have the same problem in Europe and in our case. Okay, the bureaucracy is not maybe too bad, but so it takes time to change that. Then getting the university to understand customers. I mean, that refers or reflects pretty well with both Petteri's and Alessandra's presentation. The university people should understand the outside world and the organizations as customers, and sort of a customer approach. Even if I mean, and I said that I hate the marketing word here, even if my background is in marketing, and Petteri commented on that. But I mean, what I said was that I hate a one-time marketing effort. I mean, this should be ongoing activity. Then in one of we had four sort of conclusions. Then the third one was that there are people in each university who have contacts with industry, and so bring them in and let them not teach, but I mean help the others to bring those or build those contracts or contacts. So there are people, so recognize the ones that are active in this collaboration and bring them sort of forward. That was the third comment. And the fourth one was building the trust between the university and the local business environment. And again, that takes time. So these 4 comments: bureaucracy, understanding customer, bring in the ones with the contacts, and building trust, this is how I summarize or my colleagues in Indonesia summarized it, and I just told it to you. How about you, Trond?
Yes, thank you, Pasi. So we only really had time for the partners to discuss in their own language. There wasn't time for any further discussion. But the first point they wanted to make was that, echoing your point about different contexts and the importance of context, the different partners in Indonesia have different contexts. So it was important for them to understand their own specific organization, university, and their own regional differences, the different economies and so on, and the different locations. In general, I think they felt, though, that there was they were still at the early stages of developing good, effective collaborations with businesses. They felt that there was a lot more to be done in terms of developing those relationships. And one of the key factors that they highlighted was the issue of trust and the building of trust. So it's the same with your discussion. Trust was an important factor. Why should business get involved in universities? And there were some examples they reported of consultancy, where businesses had sought the advice of the universities, but they were still developing those into something more significant and substantial. Where they had got relationships with business, as I understood it, they were often from small businesses rather than big companies, and they were often to do with their alumni links, graduates from the university who were coming back to the university to develop a relationship. In a way, I think the motive is to give something back to their university. That was certainly my experience, and that may be why those relationships are easier to foster than other ones. And that was it, really. I think I think Andrea's gone, but I don't know if Amina or any of the other group want to add anything to what I've said.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, sort of a good summary. I mean, from today's, we have 2 days to go now, and there's a longer discussion. I mean, we can have this discussion tomorrow when there will be more cases, more examples, and suggestions for, but this was I mean, to me at least, a good starting point for developing the next 2 days because I mean, this is not rocket science. I mean, if I summarize the whole thing, you have to start from somewhere, and it takes time. It takes, I mean, building trust, building, I mean, talking to the bureaucrats in your own university. I mean, everything takes time, and it's just starting from somewhere. Start building from what you have locally, and that's how it goes. And that's the same thing as was the Bologna example of the evolution of the changes that they have had, or what we have experienced in Turku, that it's a gradual process, and you can't do things overnight. So that's, I guess. Do you have any comments, or should I end the discussion for that type of a conclusion? of today. Any comments from anybody? Or should we join again tomorrow? Yeah, Andrea left, Alessandra left, yeah. But that's what they said. So any other comments, or should we close down today's discussion and we'll meet again tomorrow?
Yes. The second option.
Anything? So thank you very much for everybody. I mean, for being present and for the presenters. So we'll continue tomorrow. You have the link, and we have similar type of arrangement for tomorrow's presentations and everything. So stay safe.
I take picture. Please wait. I take picture short time.
Okay.
I take picture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
See you
Wash your
tomorrow.
hands, get a vaccination, and
See you
we'll
tomorrow.
see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers, bye.
Bye.
Bye, Pasi.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, Patrick, see you.
You.
Prof. Irmina.
Ya.
Kita punya daftarnya nama sama kontak
Oh,
sama.
punya. Hari ini punya. Tak ada linknya, tak suruh ngisi.
Oh,
Jadi
ya.
kita punya.
Ya, di absen disuruh ngisi gitu kan ini.
Ya, tak suruh ngisi. Tapi tadi yang respon hanya 40. Sebentar. Kalau masih tak share ininya. Kalau jangan pergi dulu, tak share ininya. Kita juga ini 42. Yang tapi enggak tahu ini yang 42 itu. Nah, ini 42. Ini yang respon 42. 42 respon. Ini yang absen ini. Ini yang isi. Nanti saya akan langsung bisa pindah ke Excel. Okay. Nah, ini tapi yang ngisi oh ya 42 semuanya. Jadi ini ITK paling banyak. 8,19% ya. Nah, ini address juga 42. Pon juga 37. Pon hanya 37 yang memberi respon. Kalau komen saya sendiri belum absen, lupa.
Ya nggak apa-apa Bu, terima kasih Bu. Nanti.
Iya, sudah. Ini nanti aman, kita bisa kontak-kontak. Terus untuk hari ini saya juga sudah sambungkan live streaming. Jadi hari ini Bapak Ibu kalau mau lihat lagi